Hello, everyone. Relax and enjoy this weekly compilation made just for you. Without further ado, on to the video. Story 1. You don't like your boyfriend seeing me braless in the dorm? Then he won't. I live in a college dorm on an all-female floor. I usually wear a bra when leaving the dorm building, but I'm not going to put on a bra under my shirt just to walk down the hall to the bathroom. A few days ago, I left my room and walked 10 yards down the hall to the water fountain, refilled my water bottle, and went back to my room. I was wearing a white tank top and no bra. The tank top was fitted but not see-through, so you could only see the outline of my nips. There was a small group of people hanging out in the hall outside a few of the rooms, but I didn't think much of it. Until around half an hour later, when I got a knock on the door from one of the girls I'd seen in the hall. She said something to the effect of, "Hey, sorry to ask you this, but if you go out in the hall again, could you put a bra on? My boyfriend's out there and he was staring a little, so..." I'm super non-confrontational, so I was like, yeah, sure, sorry about that. And for the rest of that night, anytime I left my room, I put a bra or sweater on. And that was the end of it. Or so I thought. The next day, my roommate told me she'd overheard the girl telling a few of her friends about the incident while in the bathroom. She said the girl was making it sound like I'd been purposefully trying to seduce her boyfriend while wearing basically nothing, taking my time at the water fountain, posing to push out my boobs, the whole works. When she left the bathroom, my roommate said the girl was actually acting it out at the water fountain, pretending to be me. That night, I passed the girl and some of her friends on my way to go brush my teeth. I wasn't wearing a bra, I was already in pajamas. The girl looked pointedly down at my chest and all of them started giggling. But the last straw was when the entire dorm got an email from the RA yesterday saying she'd gotten some anonymous complaints about people dressing inappropriately in the hallways and asking that we all just make sure we're keeping things covered up. So here's where I got my petty little revenge. I knew that the girl's boyfriend doesn't go to college here. The girl and I were in the same orientation group and chatted a bit back then. I also knew that due to the pandemic, we aren't allowed to have non-student or family guests in the dorms this year. So I used the same anonymous complaint form to issue a complaint about people bringing their off-campus boyfriends into our dorm and them not wearing a mask. Masks are mandatory in the hallways, although not frequently enforced. This morning, the RA emailed again saying that due to anonymous complaints, they'd be enforcing the no off-campus guests rule by checking IDs of unfamiliar guests to make sure they were students from then on. Really? This girl should be thanking me. If she was concerned about her boyfriend seeing the vague outline of my boobs in the dorm hallway, she no longer needs to worry. Alright, let me say, if there was any question in your mind, you are not the a-hole at all in this situation. Like, there are maybe a few a-holes in this story, and none of them are you. Like, for starters, that other girl and everything, to heck with her. You were wearing a shirt, you were covered, and oh no, you could kind of see, who cares? That's nothing. That is so ridiculous and petty. The other a-hole is the boyfriend, like, staring and stuff. Like, I'm sorry, other woman. If your boyfriend's staring at someone's boobs, that's not the problem with the person with the boobs. It's the problem with your boyfriend, and you should be talking to him if you're uncomfortable with that. Granted, it's natural for people to kind of glance at some stuff or whatever, you know? I mean, whenever I see, man, if I see people wearing just, amazing bracelets, that's a catch for me. I don't know. But that's beside the point. We're getting derailed here. What I mean to say is, out of all the potential a-holes in this story, our OP is not one of them. They are not to blame in the least, and even your act of petty revenge, good on you, and frankly also smart to enforce during the pandemic. It sounds like this was during more peak pandemic times, and so I think you have every right to want that even if it wasn't for petty revenge, so good on you and sucks to them. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for bringing my sister-in-law's wallet to the restaurant when she conveniently always forgets it? My, 28 female, sister-in-law Amy, 26 female, always comes to visit from out of town. She stays with us instead of hotel and always wants to go to expensive restaurants. She always conveniently forgets her wallet or domes up with some excuse as to why she can't pay her share. She has implied that since I make much more money than her, I should be the one to pay. No, not my husband should pay, but me specifically. I do make a fair amount of money, but not so much that I can treat someone every time they come into town. Nonetheless, in the past, I've just paid the bill and asked her to pay me back. She never has. She had made a reservation at an extremely expensive restaurant last night, and before we left, I made it clear that I wouldn't be paying her bill. This is where I might be the a-hole, and I'll admit I got this move straight from an episode of 2.5 Men. As we were leaving, her and my husband went to the car. I pretended I forgot something and went back inside. I found her wallet sitting right on top of her suitcase. I put it in my purse, and we went to the restaurant. When we were done eating, I asked for separate bills. She said, "No, we need one bill," because she forgot her wallet again. I reached into my purse and said, "This wallet?" She was extremely furious. She said that I should not have touched or grabbed her wallet. So, am I the a-hole for taking her wallet and bringing it to the restaurant? Edit. Wow, thanks for all the awards. Geez, LOL, so many comments that I can't keep up, but thank you to everyone who had something to say. Edit 2. Amy just called me. She saw this post and she yelled at me for bad-mouthing her on the internet. Honestly, I don't care, Amy. Hopefully reading all these comments is a wake-up call for you. Hey, Amy, I got bad news. Now you're being bad-mouthed on a YouTube video. I'm sorry, but Amy, that's a crappy move. Like, okay, if the OP was like taking Amy out to eat at these expensive restaurants without, Amy like saying so, or Amy's like, "Oh, we should go out to eat." And in Amy's mind, she's thinking of, Applebee's or something, and you're taking her over to like Mara or something like that, then yeah, I would say it's kind of a dink move if she doesn't make that much money to be like, "Oh, Amy, can't you afford your $80? But Amy's the one instigating going out to these expensive restaurants. Amy is the one who is making reservations at expensive restaurants and then expecting you to pay or conveniently forgetting her wallet. And that is where Amy has lost this argument. Amy is the a-hole in this situation. I'm sorry. Just because you make more money and she's your sister-in-law does not obligate you to pay for her food. Like I said, if you're the one instigating these big expensive restaurants, knowing that Amy doesn't make as much, yeah, you know what? That's on you. You should be treating and paying, because if you wanted to go there, that's you. Amy wants to go there, then Amy gets to pay. And if she's going to throw a fit because you touched her wallet and brought it along for her, no, that bucket doesn't hold any water, Amy. That's a terrible excuse. And either start going to cheaper restaurants or pay your fair share. That's that. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for not taking down my video that was a gift from my best man? I have a sister that's 6 years older than me. My parents for years canceled on me last minute because of my sister. I have a basketball game. Oops, sorry, sister doesn't feel like going out. I'm graduating. Oops, sorry, sister had a bad day at work. They have missed both major and small events in my life because of her meltdowns. I met the love of my life. We decided to tie the knot. From the beginning, I told my parents how I'm worried my sister will ruin another special moment in my life. My mom told me over and over again it would not happen. The day of my wedding, I received a voicemail from my mom saying they couldn't come because my sister's dog was sick and she was upset. I was hurt. My best man, however, is a jokester. He took my phone, then went to my fiancé and asked if he could post a video of our wedding as a gift on social media. She loved his idea. I had no idea about it until I came home. Our honeymoon was at a lakeside cabin, no cell service. The post's caption was, "My best friend, he's an amazing person even if his parents never showed up for him." The video was still pictures of us next to her parents, me on the dance floor, cutting the cake, where you would normally see both parents in wedding pictures. The sound behind my video was my mom's voicemail explaining how they couldn't come because my sister's dog was sick. I came home a week later to hundreds of messages. Family members from both sides insisted I take it down. I was told my sister hasn't stopped crying. My mom is refusing to leave the house. I may be the a-hole here. I didn't take it down when I got my messages. I didn't call my family back right away. I waited until my vacation time was over at work and enjoyed my time with my wife in our new home before I contacted anyone. My dad told me to take down the video. It was just a bad night for them, that they will make it up to me and my wife for not coming. My reply was exactly, how do you plan to make up my wedding? It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You chose to ignore my feelings on the whole matter. Then he just repeated he will make it up to me. I told him I would take down the video only when he had made up missing my wedding. Flustered, we both hung up the phone before we both said things we shouldn't have. Am I the a-hole here? I could have just taken down the video. This is a tough one. It really, really is. Like, absolutely, I think your sister's kind of an a-hole. She is that kind of attention seeking, especially and this is coming from a person who would climb a mountain if it would make their dog feel better. I love my dogs, and if they were sick, I would absolutely be worried. And I'm also a person who doesn't think all that much of weddings. They're not important to me personally, but it is your wedding day. You're choosing to have a wedding. It is clearly something very important to you and your now wife. And the fact that, if your sister didn't come, fine. She's worried about her dog, couldn't find someone to watch it, whatever. The fact that your parents also were like, oh, poor dear, we'll stay with you, instead of going to your wedding, that's a-hole behavior. That is just, I struggle to actually comprehend what is going through your parents' mind that they would think that that's the choice to make. It's your wedding, Yeah, and so... yeah, having that video up and the fact that it definitely takes shots at them for their bad decision, I guess it's a little bit of an a-hole move, It maybe should be something that's more private. I don't know, but really, they also kind of deserve it. It might be a little bit of an a-hole move, but theirs was a big gaping a-hole move. Story 2. Today, I effed up by buying everyone an Ancestry DNA kit and ruining Christmas. Earlier this year, Ancestry DNA had a sale on their kit. I thought it would be a great gift idea, so I bought 6 of them for Christmas presents. Today, my family got together to exchange presents for our Christmas Eve tradition, and I gave my mom, dad, brother, and 2 sisters each a kit. As soon as everyone opened their gift at the same time, my mom started freaking out. She told us how she didn't want us taking them because they had unsafe chemicals. We explained to her how there were actually no chemicals, but we could tell she was still flustered. Later, she started trying to convince us that only one of us kids needs to take it since we'll all have the same results and to resell extra kits to save money. Fast forward, our parents have been fighting upstairs for the past hour, and we are downstairs trying to figure out who has a different dad. Too long didn't read. I bought everyone in my family Ancestry DNA kits for Christmas. Mom started freaking out. Now our parents are fighting, and my dad might not be my dad. Update. Thank you all so much for all the love and support. My sisters, brother, and I have not yet decided yet if we're going to take the test. No matter what the results are, we will still love each other and our parents no matter what. Update 2. Christmas isn't ruined! My F-up actually turned into a Christmas miracle. Turns out my sister's father passed away shortly after she was born. A good friend of my mom's was able to help her through the darkest time in her life, and they went on to fall in love and create the rest of our family. They never told us because of how hard it was for my mom. Last night, she was strong enough to share stories and photos with us for the first time, and it truly brought us even closer together as a family. This is a Christmas we will never forget, and yes, we are all excited to get our test results. Merry Christmas, everyone. P.S. Sorry, my mom isn't a W. No, you're not my daddy. Okay, so at first I thought that this was going to be a mom who was just kind of paranoid about giving out her genetic data to a company that might use it for whatever means, which I don't know enough about that, but I absolutely do not begrudge anyone who feels that way, because everything online is trying to steal our data anyway, and I feel like our genetic code is as much our data, like that is the core of our data. And you're giving it to this not just giving it to this company, but paying them for the privilege. And you get a little bit of information back, which, and I'm also not saying that if you've done one of these kits that it's a bad thing. I did one of these myself, and my results were pretty fun and interesting. And yeah, I don't know if it's bad in the long run or good or what. Do whatever you want. But I understand why people would be upset about that. And I thought, that was my thought, was like the mom had just like heard a lot of stuff and then conspiracies around it about chemicals. But no, it actually turned out to be a story that's a little bit dark, but also had a really nice, happy ending. You know, it's sad that your mom went through such a dark time and struggled with that, but it's also nice that that secret came out and was able to kind of bring you all together, because I think open communication and honesty is important in any relationship, be it romantic, family, friend, whatever. And hey, look, the truth turned out to be a good thing. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for telling my son he deserved his girlfriend breaking up with him? So, my son had a long-distance girlfriend for about 2 years. She was great, a really nice girl, and we all loved her and welcomed her with open arms. She was flying here constantly to visit him, like a weekend a month, and he didn't lift a finger to go visit her. I tried talking to him about it several times and told him he should really start looking into flying over to her instead of expecting her to do all the traveling. He said no, and my wife probably had something to do with it, as she constantly told him she was afraid of him flying. I spoke to them both and said this girl is great for him. She was willing to move over to our country too, but said there was one condition, and that was he'd have to fly over to her country too, which is fair enough. He said no, he didn't want to fly or travel anywhere. My son was becoming lazier and lazier, eventually telling his girlfriend and us that he was perfectly fine never traveling anywhere, including holidays, etc. Last week he told us she dumped him. I went on her Facebook page, as we're all still friends. She wrote us an apology letter about how she's upset it didn't work out, but these things happen, so we're on good terms. And looks like she's with a new guy already. Me and my wife have no doubt she was seeing him whilst still in a relationship with my son. I confessed to them both that I actually agree with her decision, and she should have expected it. He did not treat her properly, and I hope he learns lessons for the next one, because he needs to make more of an effort. I said he deserved it for his lack of effort in the relationship and for essentially just allowing this girl to spend all her money and time coming here all the time. Wife and son are very upset I said this, very, very upset, and my wife says I'm being horrible. Am I the a-hole? I stand by what I said. All right, jury. We'll have to leave it up to you for the final verdict. Yeah, we're going judge style with this, I guess. I don't know. I've just decided that. But so we have a person. You're dishing out some pretty cold truths here. Like, it is true that it is kind of your son's fault here. Your son didn't make efforts, and relationships are oftentimes about compromise and finding balance. Each person needs to be giving and receiving, and there are going to be some things that it's like, hey, for this relationship to work, this is something that I need from you. And if the other person's not willing to give it, well, then it's up to them, you know. It's the ball is in his court, and he did not return the serve. Now, the way that you presented and all that stuff, no, I mean, I 100% agree. I'm not saying that it's not an a-hole thing to do. That might be a bit of an a-hole move, but I think it's an a-hole move that your son kind of needed to hear. Your son was You know, being lazy, not putting in effort to a relationship, you've got to be willing to put in some effort. And while we can't judge your son on a whole, I'd say at least in this regard, he screwed up, and hopefully it's a lesson learned, and hopefully your harsh truth gets through to him, even if you might be an a-hole for saying it. Story 2. Don't announce your engagement at someone else's wedding, or this might just happen to you. Last summer, I was at a cousin's wedding. His bride and her family had been close with ours since before I was born, and the couple had known each other since they were toddlers, so it was a particularly exciting event for both sides of the family. However, after the ceremony was over and the party had only just started, one of the bridesmaids decided to announce her own engagement. The attention was immediately taken away from newlyweds and brought to the bridesmaid, who I'll call Sarah, and her equally smug fiancé. My cousin's wife, I'll call her Emma, didn't make a scene or utter a single negative word about Sarah. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but she kept grinning and acted very happy for the other couple. This was unusual, as Emma is typically quite confrontational and speaks her mind no matter the consequences. Sarah later picked Emma to be the maid of honor at her own wedding, which took place last weekend. I wasn't there for it, but my cousin sent me some of the best bits on Snapchat and explained the whole situation. This is where the fun begins. Emma's two much younger sisters were the flower girls at Sarah's wedding. At the very last moment, Emma switched out the white petals in their baskets to blue ones she had secretly brought with her. She told her sisters not to say anything about it or let the bride see them until it was time to scatter them down the aisle. Sarah looked very confused upon seeing the blue petals, which didn't coordinate whatsoever with her theme, but of course she didn't say anything about it in the moment. Most of Sarah's other bridesmaids were also Emma's friends, had attended Emma's wedding, and were in on Emma's scheme. At the reception, Emma's sisters and the other bridesmaids were tight-lipped when Sarah began demanding to know why there were blue petals. The wedding planner ended up getting a lot of abuse for not checking the flower girls' baskets before they walked down the aisle. Finally, it was time for the speeches. The speeches took place in front of a massive screen displaying a loop of photos with Sarah and her husband, which had been compiled by Emma. Emma took the remote that controlled the presentation screen, and at first she showed some pre-approved humorous photos of Sarah with Emma and other friends to facilitate a couple light-hearted jokes. Then, at the very end, Emma said to Sarah that she must be wondering why there were blue petals instead of the white ones originally planned. That was when Emma displayed the last slide from her presentation. Emma announced in front of everyone that she was 5 months pregnant and that she just discovered the baby was a boy, hence the blue petals. The last slide, her ultrasound picture. There were shocked yells and gasps. Sarah had a fit, but those involved in the scheme cheered so loudly that I sincerely regret watching the Snapchat recording with headphones. Apparently, Sarah had been very nasty to her bridesmaids before, driving several of them away and forcing the others to pay ridiculous amounts of money for dresses. Emma and my cousin were eventually thrown out of the party, but they were all smiles. Sarah's fuming mother went to confront her outside, and Emma retorted with, "Gentle, gentle, I'm pregnant." I reckon Sarah doesn't speak to the majority of those bridesmaids anymore. Too long didn't read. Self-important bridesmaid announces her engagement at my cousin's wedding, stealing the spotlight from her and his bride. Said bridesmaid foolishly names my cousin's wife her maid of honor and behaves like a complete bridezilla. Cousin's wife sabotages her wedding to announce her own pregnancy. Now, I was going to say that this sounds like a situation that should have maybe been discussed in private instead of concocting a malicious revenge scheme, because in general, maybe not the best. Just communication and being like, hey, I know that your engagement was really important to you, but announcing it during my wedding reception really detracted from what the day was about. And and this is coming from a guy who doesn't think weddings are all that big of a deal, but I respect that other people do believe that, and I would never pull something like this. But hearing that Sarah was a bit of a bridezilla and did the thing that I hate, where a bride's just like, you're going to be my wedding party and you're going to have to spend a lot of money because it's my big day. It's like, no, if you want your big day, you pay for big things. Don't push that off onto your friends. It's not that important. See, this is where the whole I don't think weddings are that important part comes out. But no, it sounds like Sarah kind of had this coming, especially if a number of the bridesmaids were all on board with this. So, again, I'm going to have to say, it is still a bit of an a-hole move because it's also ruining the wedding for well, not ruining the wedding. It's not ruining the wedding. You know what? Whatever. You do you. I think it's fine. The time I ruined my high school teacher's career and got her fired in the greatest way possible. This story is widely known amongst my family and is constantly brought up and joked upon in my group of friends even years later. A buddy of mine suggested that this is the perfect place to make it public, so let's get into this crap storm. Backstory. I was a senior in high school, and at the time I had never been the brightest student. I was a solid C student, and I had never received a detention or had any kind of bad student record. This is important because to this day I still have no idea why the teacher treated me this way. The teacher, who we will name Mrs. Frank, had been a teacher there for more than a decade and was widely known for being a pretty heartless bee who the administrators saw as the golden child. Mrs. Frank taught algebra, which is my worst subject, so naturally I had issues understanding the lessons and would ask questions frequently. To some, these questions are easily answered, but to me, it was rocket science. Usually when someone asks a dumb question, no one should address it. However, in Mrs. Frank's case, she would belittle me in front of everyone by saying things such as, "And here comes the slow boy again. Wow, surprise, surprise, you don't understand it again. Really, we have to go extra slow for you today, don't we?" Etc., etc. Oh. I tried going to the administration about it before, but again, she was considered the golden child. They would send someone in to examine her during class. She would act respectful and normal for one day, and go back to being a bee the next. This went on for about half the year until I had enough. I went to the local Radio Shack, bought a recorder, and secretly recorded every insult she would throw at me. I would sometimes instigate to make up for the lost time. Go ahead. Feed the fire. Fast forward to the end of the year, and I'm sitting in Mrs. Frank's class when I ask a question. Her response, and I quote because it's burned into my brain, was, "I've been teaching here for over 10 years, and that was the single dumbest question I've ever heard come from anyone's mouth." She continued the lesson without answering. I calmly stood up, packed up my stuff, and headed to the nurse's office to dismiss myself from school. We were allowed to dismiss yourself if you were 18. I went home, compiled all the brutal tapes into one glorious masterpiece, and headed back the next day to show the administrators. I sat down with the principal, and we listened to a couple of the insults before he stopped me. He wanted more witnesses present as well as Mrs. Frank's. He told me we would meet up the next day where I could show him and the rest of the administrators the full tape. I walked into school the next morning being the most nervous I've ever been for anything. I was called down to the office where I met with some board directors, the local school police officer, the principal, the vice principal, and Mrs. Franks. What followed were some of the greatest minutes of my life. I watched as the administrators went from fed up with being in another useless meeting to furious and speechless, with some of them keeping their mouths open for the duration of the tape. I also watched Mrs. Franks go from confident and stuck up to her realizing that she had effed up beyond repair. She was publicly roasting herself in front of the most important people from the district. The tape ended, and without hesitation, the administrators looked around in astonishment, and the principal turned to me and said, "I think we have everything we need to. Thank you." And I was quietly dismissed from the room. The final time I saw Mrs. Frank was leaving the room. I looked back and we made eye contact through her tear-filled eyes, and I gave her the biggest, most evil smile. I returned to class the next week and Mrs. Frank was nowhere to be found. The story spread quickly throughout the school and I was seen as a saint. I had successfully gotten her fired and made it almost impossible for Mrs. Frank to return to her teaching career, as well as cut off most of her connections she had with other teachers in the school. I had ruined her financially because no school district in the area would hire this walking piece of garbage. If you're reading this, Mrs. Frank, I'd like to take this moment to tell you to go F yourself. Too long didn't read. My high school teacher belittled me all year. I secretly recorded her, showed the administrators, and got her fired. As someone who once wanted to be a teacher and has just a tremendous amount of respect for teachers and the amount of stress that they have to go through for typically too little pay, I think Mrs. Frank had this coming. That is awful what she was doing to talk down to a student like that consistently. I could maybe understand if a teacher slipped up because they were just tired and frustrated after, weeks and weeks of just dealing with untold amount of stress and just let strip, just like, oh my God, what a dumb question. No, sorry, something like that. A single slip up one can kind of excuse to a point, though still you shouldn't be doing that with students. That is part of your job, is to help them, and that is the opposite. But to be consistently doing that to a student is abuse. That's cruel. You are wearing down a student's, mental well-being. This is emotional hell for a student, to be mocked and ridiculed by a teacher in front of other students. I'm sorry, she doesn't deserve to be teaching. To be doing that much, yeah, I agree that she should have lost that job and probably shouldn't be rehired unless she goes through some pretty extensive work that I don't even know what it would be. But yeah, sorry, Mrs. Frank, but you had that coming. Am I the a-hole for wearing the joke bikini my friend got me? So, it was my birthday a couple months ago. Had a party, got some gifts. My friend Mandy got me a super cute bikini. I liked it, said thanks. She had ripped the tags off, but whatever. Anyway, went to the community pool with my roommate, wore a bikini. Got in the water, roommate immediately is like, girl? I look and see that this bikini is now kinda see-through. Good joke, Mandy. Anyway, Mandy invited me over to her place to hang out with her and her boyfriend and a few others. Most leave and we're still hanging out. I'm like, hey, what if we get in your hot tub? I go change after them and meet her boyfriend in the hot tub. She's getting new drinks. I hop in. Immediately, he's looking at my chest. I pretend I don't notice and just make small talk. She comes out a few minutes after and just looks in shock. Eventually gets in. Is that the one I bought? Yeah, I love it. I wear it everywhere. Make up some stuff about how I wore it to the beach, some party with lots of guys, etc. And she's just like, oh. We're in the tub for 20 to 30, eventually get out and change. She approached me after and was like, I'm sorry, I thought you noticed, but it goes kind of see-through. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Why did you buy me a ducking see-through bathing suit? She's like, it's a joke. Wait, you know? So you just spent the last 30 minutes flashing my boyfriend on purpose? I reply, I'm just wearing my birthday gift from her. Anyway, am I the a-hole? No! I mean, for many people, Mandy would be the a-hole. You had a good sense of humor about it, which is wonderful, because you know what? They're just breast people. They're nipples. Who cares? Men, women should be able to be topless. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. Get over it. But some people would be uncomfortable with that, and that should be respected, and yeah, Mandy would be kind of the a-hole. So yeah, the fact that you chose to wear it in front of her boyfriend, that's life. So what? They're boobs. And Mandy, what, are you afraid? Afraid that your boyfriend will suddenly, what? What are you afraid of? They're just boobs. Mandy, you can't be upset about this. If Mandy's upset about it, to heck with Mandy, because she pulled a joke that would be very nasty in some people's books. And you were cool with it, and then also did that to get as a joke. I think it was great. So, yeah, either nothing. You're not an a-hole. You're fine. Mandy, it's a iffy joke. I just saw a lady get tasered for trying to snatch a woman's face mask to give her to a child. What? I argued with my husband about whether or not to post this because I'm pretty sure this will make the local news and I didn't want to burn this account just yet, but he won RPS, so here we are. Prepare yourself, this story has layers. We were at the dreaded big box store picking up potting soil because we're going to do it ourselves through the isolation. Things aren't crazy here yet, but there is a 2 per customer limit on a majority of items. I assume this means everything, so we're getting 2 bags each of a few different types of soil. My husband is loading the last of 8 bags on our cart when I hear her. I know it's a Karen just by the level of unnecessary outrage in her voice. Karen, are you kidding me? Not a lot of people out here in the garden center, but we all look to her. I was almost disappointed to see she didn't come with the requisite haircut. She actually looked like a frazzled mom, her kid tugging on her hand and an overfull hand basket of groceries. And I had a moment of, girl, I feel you, but damn it, she was pointing at us. Karen, you can't buy that many. You are hoarding. My husband, yeah, we can. We're getting 2 each. Karen, oh, you don't fool me. I know what you're doing. My husband, so do I. F off. I'm just sitting there imagining all the ways I'm gonna rock his world tonight. Well, Karen huffed at that, spun around and yanked her kid back inside to go complain to the employee working the register nearby. Now, we already paid for our items. The employee had come out and scanned the bags earlier, and he could easily see our cart from inside. So, being finished, we put the cart out of the garden center into the parking lot, and then the automatic doors open behind us, and I hear, "Now they're stealing!" Just great. We load the soil in the car and turn around to bring the cart back and look at plants. By the time we get back, Karen has given up on trying to convince the employee we're the Bonnie and Clyde of dirt and is now trying to negotiate skipping somebody in line. She has a child, you see, and her handbasket, well, it's just so full and heavy. Could she please just scooch right on in here real quick and it'll just be an extra second, she swears. The woman Karen is trying to skip is young, maybe college age, and wearing a face mask. Not a medical mask, but the stretchy kind you'd wear while riding a motorcycle or when you're skiing. My husband has just informed me it's a neck gaiter. The mask is black and has like scary wolf teeth on it that honestly make the girl look like somebody you should not F with, even though she was wearing a Gap t-shirt and flip-flops. Mask girl just shaking her head no, and that's all I've got as we dropped off the cart. Eyebrows pick up a couple plants and we head inside to wait in line. Now it's showtime. Karen and Mask Girl are near the register facing off, no pun intended. From the looks of things, Mask Girl finished her purchase and Karen stopped her before she could leave. I don't know if she grabbed her or anything, but Karen was still holding her full handbasket, so she hadn't checked out yet. Well, she hadn't paid for her groceries yet because clearly this woman had checked out. Karen, but you don't even need it now. You're leaving. My son could get sick because you won't give it to him and he needs it. Mask Girl, hell no, you can't have it. Back off, lady. Karen, but my son really likes it and it's obviously made for boys anyway. Why would you even want to wear something so scary? Mask Girl, because I like it and it has my germs on it. Why would you put a stranger's mask on your kid? Karen, why are you being so rude? You wouldn't let us through the checkout first, and now you're making my son very upset. Mask Girl, your problem, not mine. And then Mask Girl turns to leave while Karen manifests the biggest balls ever and grabs Mask Girl by the back of her mask. Let me make a side note here. When all of this is going down, we are all just standing in line and watching. The register is still going boop, boop, boop as the employee scans items, but otherwise we're all just inside this hypnotic bubble. But when Karen reached out towards Mask Girl, it was like the bubble popped and made everything crystal clear. Not slow-mo or anything, but I absolutely felt hyper-aware, like Spider-Man. Karen reaches out, people on both sides of me inhale loudly. Karen grabs the masks and yanks the lady on my right, yells, and my husband steps forward, so getting laid tonight. Mask Girl tucks her head down and she turns to Karen like a peed-off bull with a bright and shiny new target. I think Karen was going to say something like, "Don't walk away from me," or something, but all she got out was, "Don't crack." I looked around because the noise was so loud I figured the roof was about to cave in, but out of the corner of my eye I saw Karen spasm and drop to the floor, writhing. Little Miss Mask Girl had a effing taser. I don't know when she pulled it out, this tiny little flashlight-looking thing, but she laid Karen out with it. And not one of us moved for what felt like forever, like we were frozen. And then it was effing bedlam. Security guards showed up, more employees showed up. Mask Girl is chilling like she's been through this before and knows what comes next. The kid is screaming that the wolf girl killed his mom, even though she's groaning and sobbing on the floor and clearly not dead, but maybe wishing she was. The people that had been in line with us were all talking at once, trying to tell the security guard what happened. We hung around, just witnessing the insanity for maybe 2 minutes before Karen started choking out demands for an ambulance. The police, a lawyer, the mayor, restitution, and reparations. My husband made eye contact with an employee and got a thumbs up when he put the plants on a shelf and pointed towards the door. We got the F out of there. We drove home in silence until my husband parked the car in our driveway, and then we just burst out laughing. Neither of us have ever seen anything like that before. We live in a small beach town, people are super laid back and mellow. Karen was anything but, and I hope to never see her again. ETA, not sure what the awards mean, but thank you very much. I made this account to tell a story that happened 25 years ago and blew my shot on Karen instead. Slowly responding to messages, but to answer a couple cues, I can't access security footage. I am unreliable narrator in what Karen's body actually did. I wasn't looking directly at her, but she flailed, fell, and squirmed while groaning. I do not know the difference between a taser and a stun gun. Mask Girl had what looks like a thin baton flashlight. We have very lax taser laws in this state. Thanks for reading, take care of yourselves, and stay safe. Boy, oh boy, this story really gave me some flashbacks to some of the earlier pandemic times when back when people maybe even actually cared more about masks and everyone had all kinds of weird ones, and now we just get whatever ones we could. Now most people don't wear them and everything. I don't know. No comments here. But leave the poster alone about the dirt. Like, she's not hoarding like a food supply or toilet paper. Boy, the flashbacks are coming hard. Ooh. But it's dirt, it's soil, it's outside, it's everywhere. Chill out. If the store was gonna be like, no, you're doing a weird thing here, I'm sorry, we can't let you do that. That's up to them to decide, Karen. Chill out. But then, trying to steal a mask from someone or demand that they give it to you for your kid? No, get your kid a mask. Buy a mask in the store. Wrap a shirt around his head. I don't know, but don't do that. Don't do any of what you did. And yeah, you grab someone. You're gonna get tasered. Sorry, Karen, but wow, you're so in the wrong here. Yeesh. Boy, I do not miss that part of the pandemic. Am I the a-hole for silently getting up and walking out of the restaurant during New Year's Eve dinner after I was told to pay for everyone at the table, my in-laws? I, 32 female, recently inherited a good amount of money from my mom. I keep the money in a separate account as I still haven't decided what to do with it, and I didn't want it to go to waste. I noticed my husband constantly bringing up the inheritance money and making countless suggestions as to how I should spend it. Another thing is that he expects me to pay for nearly everything the past couple of weeks. For New Year's Eve, my husband and I met up with his family at a restaurant to celebrate. It was going fine until I found out that I was expected to pay for everyone at the table. My husband's mom joked about paying for dinner out of my inheritance pocket, which made me livid, but I showed no reaction, just silently paid for my own food and drinks. Then I got up and made my way out of the restaurant. They were shouting after me like a crowd, and my husband tried to get me to come back, but I drove home. He got back at 3 a.m. yelling at me, saying I was pathetic to get up and walk out on him and his family after they relied on me to pay for their food and thought I was gracious enough to do it. But they were wrong. He said I humiliated him and family, and that what I did was an attempt to get back at them for not being able to help mom when she was sick. Not true is all I'm gonna say. He is mad and saying that I caused a huge rift between his family and me when it wouldn't have hurt me to pay for the celebratory dinner. Am I the a-hole? No, you are not the a-hole in this situation, and it's ridiculous that anyone should even have to say that. When you go out to eat with people, unless going to like an expensive restaurant was your idea, you're like, you know what, guys, we're gonna go out to an expensive restaurant for New Year's Eve, okay? Like, if you initiated that, then maybe there is, some kind of expectation that you might pay because you're encouraging everyone to go out to eat and stuff like that. But even then, it should be kind of clarified at which point, so yeah, no, just to have the expectation that you will spend this money because you got an inheritance is just kind of gross. And that's a sad thing. When you get large amounts of money, it kind of brings out a gross side of people. And I don't want to judge folks too harshly. Who knows what kind of conditions they grew up in, if they're used to money, stuff like that. People have different reactions to that stuff, and they get excited, but you're wanting to do something, it seems, pretty sensible and really take your time to think about it, and not just start using it to pay for every little thing until suddenly, a couple months later, it's all gone because you bought yourself, some jet skis, because why not? So, I get it, I get both sides to a degree, but I think they're definitely in the wrong. To just expect someone to pay because they have more money isn't cool, unless, of course, as I said, you were the one pushing for this dinner and you maybe knew that it was outside of their price range. Then you'd be the a-hole. Otherwise, I think you're fine. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.